All right. Hello, folks. I think we are live here. Yes, it would appear so. So apologies in advance. I am sick as a dog. And it probably sounds like that is probably translating through to the computer. So apologies. My voice is going to be annoying through this, but the show must go on. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Katie Winters. I am from Spryfield in Nova Scotia. And ever since I can remember, as cliche as it sounds, I wanted to be a teacher. So as you can see here, I actually have a photo of me from my first grade yearbook. I begin by talking about all my friends and what I like to do. And excuse me, there's a line that says, "If I can't be a pop star, I'll be a teacher." I'll also try to be a vegetarian when I grow up. I did become a vegetarian, and I also list my favorite movies at the bottom there. And Lord of the Rings, still my favorite trilogy of movies. But teaching was my backup career, according to young 7, 8-year-old Katie, who was dead set on being a pop star, but teaching seemed like the next best thing, I guess. Um, but as I went through my life and as I navigated different perspectives, different life events, I realized that maybe teaching shouldn't have been my backup career. Maybe that is what I've always been meant to do. And there's a lot of things that have kind of led me to that path. So as I mentioned, I'm from Spryfield. If you're unfamiliar with where that is, it's not far from Halifax. It's just outside Halifax, actually. It is a very low income area. The main decor of the area is like stray shopping carts. There's not, these gorgeous parks and monuments and stuff you would see in maybe some different neighborhoods, but I love it. So, with that being said, I loved my high school, but it was really frustrating to attend plays or sports games at other schools that were only 20 minutes away. But we'd show up to those schools and see that they had electric car chargers, gigantic turf fields, these gorgeous auditoriums that were perfect for plays or important assemblies, that kind of thing. And myself and my peers, we found this really frustrating because it seemed to be made very clear to us that the education system did not care about poor people. So why should poor people care about the education system? So I keep mentioning the words education system, but what is that? What is it and who is it for? So French economist Jacques Delors suggests that there are 5 pillars that represent the purposes of the schooling system. And he says that pillar number 2 is learning to do. And the purpose of that pillar is to pack all of our knowledge and skills into kind of a marketable brand. In other words, the main goal of an education is to acquire a job. So I do understand the necessity of this concept, but it really does hurt my heart that much of school is designed with the sole function of getting students valuable jobs. I think that approach focuses far too much on capital. We don't live in a meritocracy. In fact, many researchers like Jacques Jerem and Louis Vallant suggest that acquiring a greater education does not equate to the potential for social mobility. There are so many factors that affect our capacity to achieve social mobility, like gender, race, sexuality, ability. So, if you're in a wheelchair, use a cane. If you even can use your limbs, if you're hard of hearing, if you're mute, there's so many different pieces. Your willingness to conform, and so much more affects your social mobility. With that in mind, I think the purpose of school should be to learn and to have the knowledge to be capable of challenging authority and the status quo. Malcolm Harris, who I'm a big fan of, I follow him on Twitter. I listen to a podcast called Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. They talk a lot about like similar things that he speaks on, carceral capitalism, capitalism in education, race theory, all kinds of stuff that has really kind of fostered my knowledge and my want to learn. But he's the author of Kids These Days, Human Capital and the Making of Millennials. And in his book, he outlines the education system and how it often fights the purposes that I suggested above. So, like challenging the status quo. Um, uh, he has a really interesting kind of concept about how we treat students. So think about it. If your career as a student, how often has a teacher said to you, you should treat school like it's your job? I don't know about you, but I never got paid to go to school. And I'm sure that any dissent would be prohibited and very easily stifled by administrators. So, if students aren't getting paid to go to school and they don't have the right to organize, then I don't really think it's much like a job, and we shouldn't be treating it like that. And he puts it pretty plainly in the quotation that he when he's talking about homework and how educators just pile it on to just to create more work for students. So imagine after a full day at the office, and school is pretty much what our children do for a job, you had to come home and do another 4 or so hours of office work. Your job required that kind of work after work. How long would you last? I'd be done. I know that for a fact. I know that for sure. It would you'd be exhausted, and children and students are exhausted. So I think that's why we need to stop treating education like it's a job. As a learner, this has never had a positive effect on me. For example, I saw my mother working really hard as an LPN, but I still saw our water get shut off and having to move around because we couldn't afford rent anymore. So jobs and capital have never given me any sense of motivation, reward as a learner, as a person, and they certainly do not give me any sense of motivation or reward as an educator. Okay, so what does motivate me as a learner and a teacher? I'm running out of voice here. For me, and I think for many other learners, the answer is truth focused and place based lived experiences. The concept of unforgetting is very important to bring up in teaching. So often, learners are disengaged because they are taught a watered down, incomplete telling of history. And I think that's especially true when we're talking about Indigenous peoples, their history and residential schooling. Throughout my life, I've admired and studied the incomparable Maya Angelou, and she once said something that has always stuck with me as a learner and as an educator since I was young. And this is the quotation: history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. And I love that quotation because I think that's the truth focused piece of learning. It's so important, and I think place based education is essential in kind of facilitating that. So, John Gato's research titled Against School: How Public Education Cripples Our Kids and Why. He stated that his children wanted to do something real. His students wanted to learn something real. They were born in school because they felt it had no application to their real lives. So, my philosophy as a learner and as an educator is I want my students to learn perspectives by doing. I want them to learn about the places around them and what they can do in those places around them. So on this slide here, I have social justice trading cards, and I talk with my hands a lot, so I've been moving these around quite a bit. But these are from Maywork Halifax. It's a labor nonprofit organization from Halifax. They do a lot of really cool work. Um, but each card, it has like a local activist or a local movement on it. I've got tons here. I ordered all 3 packs. But I would use these cards, and I really look forward to using these cards in my classroom because I would use them to inspire students to foster their own social action movement. As a learner, I myself always best responded to something in my geographical area because that made me feel like I could make a difference, made me really passionate about that. So, for example, students could pick something small or big, whatever they set their minds to, that matters to them, and brainstorm ideas on how to fix it, how to bring awareness to it. For example, there's no wheelchair ramp at their public rec center. What are they going to do about it? That's awful. They need to do something about it. You can encourage them to create awareness, like through their own media campaign, put posters up around the town, encourage them to contact local officials and really put some pressure on them. You know, are they enraged by racist street checks? Yeah, I think so. Encourage them to research actually the history of policing in their area and their hometowns and share solutions with their peers. I did this in my practicum when it came to prisons, and I suggested that students come up with what they think the prison system should look like now. Should it be more focused on rehabilitation? Should certain crimes be decriminalized? And I was like really impressed with what they offered up. I mean, I've studied like prison abolition throughout my undergrad, and they thought of a lot of things that I had never even crossed my mind. So they had a lot of really inspiring ideas, and I could tell they were interested in it because they got to kind of create it themselves. They got to act on it themselves and do it themselves. And to me, that's what education is all about. And I will ensure that all of my teaching is equitable and engaging, and I hope to learn just as much as I teach. So thank you for coming to my Fed Talk, truth focused, place based, and social action oriented education. Again, this would have been much better if I wasn't sick as a dog, and I can't wait to go lay down in my bed after this. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this class. I hope you enjoyed my Fed Talk, and cheers.